Good morning, Eastsiders. It's a pleasure to be able to finish the week with you. Boy, we've seen some real passionate stories about David this week. Today, we're going to finish out the week with a story from closer to the end of David's life. If you remember the story of Bathsheba, and so God, through Nathan the prophet, said, "This is going to cause you problems." And he said, "The things you've done in secret will be done in the open." And sure enough, you have other stories. This was not a great family David led. One of David's sons raped his stepsister, and the stepsister's full brother killed him. Absalom was his name. A few years later, he went into open rebellion against the king, and the king had to run, and all sorts of things happened. There's a lot of narrative there. But because David had a spy in Absalom's midst, he gave him bad instructions. And when the king came back and they fought, Absalom's army lost. Joab saw the son, Absalom, stuck in a tree and chopped his head off. That's where we get to this passage. Here's where we go. 2 Samuel 18:28. Then Amaz called out to the king, "All is well." He bowed down before the king with his face to the ground and said, "Praise be to the Lord your God. He has delivered up those who lifted their hands against my lord the king." The king said, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Amaz said, "I saw great confusion just as Joab was about to send the king's servant and me, your servant, but I don't know what it was." The king said, "Stand aside and wait here." So he stepped aside and stood there. Then the Cushite arrived and said, "My lord the king, hear the good news. The Lord has vindicated you today by delivering you from the hand of all who rose up against you." The king asked the Cushite, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" The Cushite replied, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up to harm you be like that young man." The king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. As he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." That goes on to become an interesting part of American literature, but it talks about the passion of David, even in the worst of times. He was fighting for his very life. He had been kicked out of his kingdom. Absalom had taken his concubines and had sex with them in the open. He had done things that should not be done. And yet, when the battle came, the king's passion was for his child. Sometimes our passion is mistaken. Sometimes we have things that we know we need to do, and yet they aren't the things that fill our hearts. And here David, even in a hard time, shows the passion God has given him for his family. Today, I don't know what you're going to face. It might be good, it might be hard, but I know that God's passion is for you. And if you seek God first, God will take care of everything else. I would ask you to keep in prayer Margaret, Pam's mom. I would ask you to also keep in prayer a couple of our people who are making decisions. We believe that God takes care of us in these times. And as we talked about Wednesday with both the teens and the adults, God helps us in our decisions. If we obey, if we put God first, if we listen, if we seek the Lord's voice. So please be in prayer for them. God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful day.